Welcome to the unofficial award ceremony for Ninjago 2025. Hey Lego, if you want to make it official, please hit me up. But I've submitted a form to my lovely audience and I asked you all to fill it out in accordance with your opinions from Ninjago 2025. Whilst it was a relatively brief form, I will say that it was very insightful when it does come to the Ninjago community. Of course, this sample size as a whole isn't completely representative of how the community feels, but it definitely was a very good gauge. The thing is that I got 500 responses from you guys, which is absolutely incredible to see. So honestly, I'm very happy with the results I did get. But I'm not going to be overly analytical to begin with. I really want to get into the best and the worst of Ninjago for this year. I will go over the top 3 for every single answer and just explain my general opinion on the consensus we have seen, because it is very fascinating. And once again, thank you to absolutely everyone who did submit on this form. Honestly, it was really cool, and if you do want to be a part of these more community type videos, definitely make sure you stick around, because I love to do them and I've got some good ones coming up. But let's actually take a look at the form and let's give some awards out for the best and worst of the year. The first question that I asked everyone was which team member received the best character development of the year, and I was very much expecting this to go in a certain direction. Of course, it is to do with specifically the main team, and if you don't really like the list I came to, I don't really know what else to tell you. This is what I consider the main team as it currently stands. But honestly, I expected this to go very comfortably to one character, but it actually was a fairly interesting split. Taking the bronze medal was actually going to be Kai, but the thing is that he actually didn't really get too many of the votes. He only actually got 28 of them, which equated to about 5.5%. I think this mostly comes from the monstrosity shorts, and I do think that is very valid at that. And I do think for the most part that was really good development and definitely did do a lot for him, but I really do think he kind of just suffered in comparison to the other members. He definitely would have been a consideration for me personally, and that's why I'm kind of glad that he did get a bit of recognition. But ultimately speaking, like I said, he really got an insignificant amount of the votes. He wasn't overly ahead of anyone else on this list, possibly only by about 10 votes. So he is getting the bronze medal, and I understand why, but unfortunately, he was nowhere near the other two. Because these two were genuinely neck and neck, and they did fluctuate in who had the majority of the percentage. Of course, it was between Aaron and Jay, but taking the silver medal for this moment was actually going to be Aaron. He got 208 of the votes, which came to about 40.7% of the votes. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, it does make a lot of sense, even though I'm sounding like a broken record. Aaron had a lot this year when it did come to Ninjago. The thing is that he had all of the stuff with his parents, he had all of the stuff with Raz, with Lloyd, and just generally battling on whether or not he wanted to be a ninja. It was a very interesting time for Aaron, and even though the end of him in Season 3 is a bit weird, of course, wanting to quit the ninja and then immediately coming right back, it's honestly debatable at best. But the thing is that it's still a very good bit of development regardless. We did learn a lot about Aaron. We learned a lot about how he feels, we learned a lot about who he is as a person, we learned a lot when it does come to the character, and it definitely does make sense as to why. So honestly, I do very much understand when it does come to the character, and like I said, he was bouncing between second and first place for a very long time, but unfortunately, he was eventually beaten out by Jay. The thing is that Jay got 217 of the votes, which was 42.5%. He, by far, was a very worthy contender when it does come to character development this year, and honestly, it makes sense that he was here. Of course, he has all of the development when it does come to being Rogue, and obviously the whole battle of trying to be good, he's trying to have the battle of realizing who he is, who to trust, where his allegiances ultimately lie. Jay has been in a very good position this year when it does come to Ninjago, and I'm hoping they only expand on it when it does come to 2026. It's going to be a fantastic time for his character, and I definitely cannot wait. Ultimately, I was expecting Jay to be the #1 spot. He of course is very worthy of that golden medal, and I'm very happy to see that he got the recognition he deserves. But honestly, it just works this way, and it could have been either or between him and Aaron. But this is the graph for the first question, and you can see generally speaking where everyone landed for this question. I mean, some of them did get votes, but less than others. The main one being Ryu, he barely got any. But considering how little they pay attention to him, I'm honestly not really surprised. But congratulations Jay for taking the gold medal for the best character development. Question 2 was the first question flipped on its head. We were looking at the main team member that received the worst character development for the year, and it was very heavily in favour of one particular character. But obviously going to start off with the bronze medal, and that actually went to Wildfire. She received 39 votes, 7.6%. This was a fairly interesting one, because Wildfire just doesn't really get too much, but this does genuinely kind of track considering everything that we know. But the thing is that, honestly, even though she got 3rd place, that isn't really many votes, so moving just immediately into the 2nd place or the silver medal, you actually do get Cole. Cole received 19% of the votes, being 97 votes overall, and again, kind of tracks because he doesn't really get too much, if anything, in Season 3 Part 1. Season 3 Part 2 he has a few moments, but they are debatable in their quality at best, and obviously he's one of the few people that actually get written out of Season 3 Part 2. So ultimately speaking, yeah, 2nd place makes sense, but 1st place is even more apparent. Taking gold for this category was, of course, Zayn. Zayn has been very much neglected this year, so I was expecting this to be the case. He ultimately got 57% of the vote, being 293 votes. Obviously, he doesn't really get too much in his main season, being Season 3 Part 1, and he is completely gone for Season 3 Part 2. So honestly, this question was just kind of destined for Zayn to be the answer. I was mainly just curious as to who else got some votes. But again, in similar vein, here is the graph. You can see again, a lot of them did get a couple votes here and there. I mean, you even got a couple for Jay. He only gets 2 votes, but the thing is that he still ultimately got votes regardless. But of course, everyone got some here and there, and you will get that for every single question. But as you can very clearly tell, Zayn won worst character development of the year. The 3rd question asked was the favourite Ninjago villain of the year. Now, there are a few good options here, and I do want to address something immediately. A lot of people noted the fact that I didn't actually put Lee on this vote. The thing is though, is that I didn't really consider him a villain. He's kind of just broken. He was kind of just lonely, so it didn't really feel right to actually put them on this list. But of course, we're going to be taking a look at 3rd place, and that actually did go to Thunderfang. You gotta remember that at the end of the day, there are just simply not a lot of villains to actually pull on for this question, so you may be looking at the fact that Thunderfang was the vote and may be a bit confused. But ultimately speaking, there are people who do enjoy Thunderfang, and there are reasons to like him at that. But he didn't really get too many votes. He only got 30, which is 5.9% of the vote. So it's not exactly like he was overly popular, it's just simply put, people liked him more in comparison to others. So it's fair enough, I can understand it, and I can respect it. The silver medal for this category did go to the Forbidden 5. I do think that was a fairly interesting one, because I have honestly thought that people like Thunderfang more than the Forbidden 5. But obviously, again, makes sense. There are some really redeeming factors when it does come to them. I nearly put them in individually because it felt like it would have been better, but I thought just pairing them as a group just made more sense. Because personally speaking, I like Noct a lot more than the rest of them, and I would honestly have been inclined to have said he was alright this year. But the thing is that his team just simply wasn't. But at the end of the day, 7.4% of the vote is fairly good, 38 votes is fair enough, and that's why it gets the silver medal. But of course, the gold medal goes to none other than Lord Raz. I mean, it kind of goes out saying that people really like Raz, and he's had some really cool moments this year. He received 79.1% of the vote, being 404 votes. That is a lot, to put it simply, and again, made complete sense because he's been one of the few consistent characters throughout the course of Dragon's Rising. So again, in similar vein, congratulations Raz to getting the gold medal when it does come to the favourite Ninjago villain of the year. And like all the other ones, here is the graph, and like I said, there just wasn't really too much competition here. The only ones that didn't make it onto favourites was Rapton, the Dragonians, and the Administration. I mean, we basically just got the top 3 that were the main villains for the year. So it does make sense, and they didn't really get too many, but you can see that some of them did somewhat make them way onto the graph. But at the end of the day, those were the 3, and fair play to all of them. Question 4, like question 2, did flip the question on its head and instead asked for the least favourite Ninjago villain of the year. And I'm going to immediately show this graph simply just down to the fact that all of them did have a quantifiable percentage. This was really interesting to see and honestly very shocking at that. But taking the bronze medal in this situation was again Thunderfang. 109 votes being a very decent percentage at 21 is honestly really interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of people didn't like Thunderfang for very valid reasons, so I did definitely expect this when it did come to the answers. Taking the silver medal for this question, again, funnily enough, was the Forbidden Five. So they took the silver medal over Thunderfang in both categories, which is really funny to see. But the thing is that again, a much more quantifiable percentage, 121 votes or 23.7% of the vote. Honestly, again, makes a lot of sense because there's a lot to not like about the Forbidden Five. It just shows though that there are people that do actually like the Forbidden Five as much as there are people who don't like them. So it was very interesting to see and definitely did have my curiosity, but they did take the silver medal. But the gold medal actually did end up going to Rapton and the Freebooters, and this is a very funny one, but again one that just simply makes sense. Unfortunately, they just kind of turn up for an episode at a time and just kind of make the episode worse. I mean, they're not really too interesting and kind of just overstay their welcome in a lot of different ways. So I'm not surprised at all that they did take the winning vote. 34.4% or 176 votes. Honestly, this is one I was expecting again, and unfortunately, they're the winner of this category. But again, I just want to show this graph because they all just had a percentage, apart from Raz of course, but that kind of again makes sense. But the thing is that it really did show that the villains for the year of 2025 was just kind of weak. They all just kind of didn't really do well clearly in the eyes of the community, and it was definitely interesting to have a look at. But that does then lead us into the fifth question, which I asked being the best Season 3 Part 1 episode. And every single episode did get at least one vote, which is nice to see, but again, kind of expected. But taking the third spot for the best episode was actually going to be the finale. The Shattered Dragon did take 106 votes, or 20.7%. Obviously, a finale kind of gets bonus points, and I think a lot of people just kind of appreciated the fact that it was a finale, so it does make sense for it to be on the board in a lot of different ways. Honestly, I would have been shocked if it wasn't. The silver medal was actually Season 3 Episode 3 being the Spectral Land, and another one I was completely expecting in a lot of ways. The thing is that it was the Morrow episode, and I think that just kind of gave it bonus points. Apart from that, it was a very solid episode, but it definitely was propped up by the appearance of Morrow. It received 23.5% or 120 votes, a very respectable amount, and again another expected one. But to be honest, I wasn't expecting the gold medal, because that one was actually Season 3 Episode 8 or Crashing Together. Now, this episode is a big standout for me personally because of the ending of the episode. I personally really like the scene where Sora saves Aaron. I think it's one of the best scenes we've had in Dragon's Rising. But honestly, I wasn't expecting it to get first place. 32.1% of the votes or 164 votes. That is fairly big and just one I just simply didn't expect. I honestly thought it was going to go to either Spectral Lands or the Shattered Dragon. So to see it get there, honestly is really cool to see, and honestly an interesting one at that. But again, here's the graph, and it's interesting to see that every single episode at least got a couple of votes. Of course, the one that got the least was the ultimate object of admiration, but we will get into that very soon. But as it stands, the best episode is Crashing Together. Honestly, very curious to know what you guys think of that one. Once again, flipping the question on its head, we then asked the worst Part 1 episode. And again, every single episode did get a couple of votes, which is really funny, I have to say, but unfortunately it was to be expected. But taking the number 3 spot in this moment was actually Season 3 Episode 6 being Fallen Wishes. This one got 13.5% of the vote, or to be more specific, 69 votes. And personally speaking, I'm very happy that this one got onto the podium because it has one of the biggest blunders in my opinion when it does come to Ninjago. I will never forget how much this episode truly angered me. The thing with rocks and the whole thing with the wishes and wishing the ninja to be there, to this very day still makes me angry. And honestly, it is debatably one of my least favorite episodes because of it. I really don't understand any of that, and I really don't want to even attempt to try and figure it out because it simply makes no sense. So it's nice to see that one got the bronze spot. Honestly, it could have gone gold and I would have been happier. Taking the silver medal though is actually going to be season 3 episode 2, The Ultimate Object of Admiration. This one again makes a lot of sense to me because it's kind of just a nothing episode. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm due a rewatch of season 3 and I really don't remember what happened in this episode whatsoever. So it makes a lot of sense. It took 25.6% of the vote, or 131 votes, so that's quite cool to see. But the thing is that it just feels almost forgettable because I don't even remember the episode. But yeah, silver medal. And taking the gold, I feel like was no surprise being the Great Zane Robbery. I know a lot of people don't like this episode for a lot of different reasons. Personally speaking, I never really saw the hate. I really like Zane versus Nox, but that kind of goes without saying. But the thing is that a lot of people just don't really like the episode. And I think it's the whole thing of the another Zane fake out that really did tip people over the edge. So whilst I don't overly agree with it, I do understand. But unfortunately, the Great Zane Robbery, it does take the bronze medal. But again, the graph just clearly shows that near enough every single episode did at least get a couple of votes. It's honestly a shame to see, but the thing is that it kind of just has to happen. Ultimately, no one will ever agree on the best or the worst definitively. There can be community picks, but there's never going to be a unanimous decision. And this just kind of proves that to me. But on to the next one, which is the best episode from part 2. Of course I had to ask this one because it just made total sense. And again, every single episode did get votes, but there were only 3 that had a quantifiable percentage. Obviously taking the third spot, or the bronze, was going to be Chaos Reigns. It got 76 votes, or 14.9%. Honestly, again in similar vein to the Shatter Dragon, it's a season finale, so you kind of just have to expect it. The silver medal actually does go to Between You and Lee, another one that I was honestly expecting there to be. The thing is that it's the Lee episode and a lot of people really do like the character. So again, the main standout episode for him was definitely going to be up there. And I definitely do appreciate this, and I'm sure a lot of people do as well, Garmadork included. But the thing is that it's just simply put the episode that a lot of people will remember, and that's why it's definitely up there. So silver medal it is. And the gold medal goes to The Casket of Bones. I feel like this one makes a lot of sense, especially considering how much a lot of people do like it. There's definitely been a lot of praise for this episode, and for that reason I do appreciate it, but weirdly at the same time, it kind of falls into the same thing I said about Season 3 Episode 2. Honestly, I know what happens in this episode, but I couldn't tell you specifically what truly does happen. It's really weird, and I definitely am due a rewatch, and this was the thing that made me realize that. But yes, Casket of Bones was the winner, 29.2%, or 149 votes. Congratulations to that episode. But again, like I said with the part 1 episodes, every single episode did get a vote. Of course, some not as many as others, but again, it's just kind of to be expected. It's no way you could believe that someone is not going to find one of these episodes to be their favourites. So again, just a really fun one to take a look at. Again, flipping it on its head for question 8, we do actually have the worst episode, and it's really funny because most of these have a quantifiable percentage. Honestly, this season gets a lot of hate, and I definitely saw it within these answers. But taking the bronze medal for this one was actually going to be Human Resources. Honestly, I'm very shocked to see that this was the case. I honestly didn't think it was too bad of an episode, but again, I do feel like it's almost a forgettable factor. But personally, I would love to hear as to why some people found this to be the worst one. I would love to know the reason, because I'm definitely curious. I mean, for reference, there are certain episodes in here that I thought would be above it, but of course, I'm not going to spoil what is above it. So for now, the bronze medal does go to Human Resources. The silver medal for the worst episode with 14.1% or 72 votes actually does go to Chaos Reigns. I mean, this is a fairly interesting one, I will say. Again, season finale boosts typically in the good category, not in the bad one. But a lot of people have definitely taken issue with this episode, and I can definitely see why. But again, in similar vein, I would love to know why people have said this is the worst episode of the season. Again, I feel like it does get finale boosts. So this was really interesting to see, and I don't really have too much to actually say about it because I just simply disagree with it. But there's nothing wrong with that, I just want to know the other side of the argument. But the gold medal did make a lot of sense because it is episode 19, or When Doves Cry. 29% or 148 votes was definitely to be expected. I mean, for a penultimate episode, it is a filler episode at that. I mean, I will always take issue with the fact that they spent literal minutes of that episode on power lids, when they could have been actually doing something towards the plot. They just simply didn't, and I really don't like them for that. I mean, there are other issues with the episode, but that's definitely the standout for me. But ultimately, it does take the gold. Unfortunate to that episode, but it is very well deserved. So bronze to When Doves Cry. But again, I just simply had to show the graph for this one because it's definitely the funniest of the bunch. You can see every single episode did get some votes, and so many of them you can actually see the percentage for. It is really interesting to note how divisive the worst episode is when it does come to part 2. Honestly, I'd be very curious to know about every single perspective as to why people believe this is the worst of the bunch. But like I said, it's just a really funny graph and I wanted to show it off. But we do then get to question 9 and 10, and I do find this one to be the very interesting one of the bunch. I mean, I ask about the best and the worst LEGO set from the year, excluding magazines, polybags, and spinners. Obviously, there are a lot of options when it does come to this category, and I can't note them all, but it was definitely an interesting one to see because of the sheer variety. The bronze medal for the best set of the year actually did go to the Thunderfang set itself. It has 63 votes or 12%. I mean, it makes sense. I am staring at mine right now and it is a fantastic looking build. Honestly, it's definitely one of the better dragons and definitely is a massive standout. Say what you like about the character, he has a good set. Makes a lot of sense and honestly, to be expected. The silver medal actually went to the Fire Mech. I mean, I personally prefer the Guardian Dragon, and I will say this, it is not first place, but definitely is a very good set at that. The Fire Mech is a fantastic looking build, and I think there's a lot of fantastic aspects to it. I think the cape is nice, the weapon's nice, just the entirety of that diorama. It is a really cool looking build, and definitely is one I will pick up one day. Personally speaking, I actually never did. Like I said, I have the Guardian Dragon, just not this one. But I definitely understand why this was a lot of people's favourites, but it was beat out by one. And that is the golden medal actually going to the Temple Bounty. It received 18.8% of the vote, or 96 votes overall. Personally speaking, I really do not care for the Temple Bounty. I take a lot of issues with its build, I take a lot of issues with its minifigure selection. I think there are a lot of issues when it does come to the set. But obviously, I am at the minority opinion, and that is completely fine. A lot of people really like the Temple Bounty, and I understand why. It's just not for me, but I do think it makes sense, unfortunately for me. I do wish something like the Guardian Dragon would have won, but that is again just my opinion, and that is the absolute joy of this, so congratulations to the Temple Bounty for taking the first place. But to translate just immediately into the worst ones of the bunch, because again, it was just as divisive and just as variety, honestly, it was just really cool to see the difference. The bronze medal, however, for the least favourite of the year, actually goes to the Rogue vs Drix race car battle. I mean, it is just a 4+ set with inaccurate minifigures and just a lackluster build. So it does make sense, again, unfortunately, to sound like a broken record, but what I will say is that I honestly kind of feel bad for having this one on there. I mean, 71 votes or 13.9% is a decent percentage, but ultimately it does just come down to the fact that it's just a bit of a meh set, and there's just no real reason to actually get it unless you want that Mech J Hood. But yeah, bronze medal feels unfortunate, but it is the third worst according to the community. The silver medal took up 14.9% of the vote, and it was Lloyd's pullback race car. This one was a fairly interesting one to see, and definitely one that I actually had to look up because I just simply did not remember what the set actually was. But the thing is that it was honestly one I wasn't really expecting to be the case. It is that decently sized vehicle with a Dragonian warrior to go along with it. I mean, it's just a small car, and they've definitely had better versions of this set for Lloyd specifically as well, so I understand why. But honestly, I think it's just simple in nature, and just honestly a good little set to get if you want another Dragonian and another Lloyd. So this one, even though it did surprise me, again, I kind of understand, because there's just better out there. But the golden medal for this category actually went to Rontu, and again, this is another interesting one, because whilst a lot of people's favourite is the Temple Bounty, and I don't agree, I also don't agree with the idea that Rontu is the worst set of the wave as well. Of course, there are a lot of very major inaccuracies when it does come to Rontu, but I think it's a solid little build with a very decent minifigure selection, so I was thoroughly shocked to actually see this, but again, I understand why people have done it. So another interesting one where I would like to know if anyone adamantly hates Rontu, I would be curious to hear your opinion, because like I said, I just simply don't really see it outside of the inaccuracies. But again, unfortunate to Rontu, but she did take the gold. But here is the graph for both of them, and like I said, you can just see the huge variety, and that's what I love about these set related questions. It just shows that there is a set for everyone out there, and it is a very good representation of how people do feel about every single set when you do take a look at them. It's always going to be someone's favourite, and it's also always going to be someone's least favourite. But that was the joy of this form and also this little award ceremony, and just like that, we've officially gone through all of the questions, and honestly, it was definitely a blast to do so. But to summarize all of the winners and losers, a massive congratulations for Jay being the best development ninja. You have a massive congratulations to Raz for the best villain. A big congratulations to Crashing Together as the best part 1 episode. Casket of Bones for the best part 2 episode. And ultimately the Temple Bounty as the best set. All of you have earned it in your own very unique ways, and I'm very glad that a lot of these are deserving the recognition. I mean, it's just really cool to see that the community do like these things that I also do like. And then the Temple Bounty. And my sympathies go to the worst of the categories that talk about things in a negative light. Of course, Zane for worst developed ninja, Rapton for the worst villain, Great Zane Robbery for the worst part 1 episode, When Doves Cry for the worst part 2 episode, and the Rontu set for the worst set. Honestly, a massive shame to see, and it is a shame to look at it in such a negative light, but it was definitely a good way to show how people felt about Ninjago over the years, and I do think that is the biggest overall that you could look at for this video. Because if there's anything to take away, it's that the best and the worst of Ninjago is certainly up to your own interpretation. There is no unanimous decision about any of these categories, not by a long shot. Of course, there are popular votes, but that is always going to be the case. So if you do take one thing away, if your personal favourite or your personal least favourite in any of these categories didn't win, just understand that at the end of the day, you have your own opinion, and that is all that matters. And that's what I want to hear in the comments section down below. What is your own answers to all of these questions, and I would love to hear why. To create more discussion around these questions would be really cool to see, and I definitely do want to have a look at them when this video does drop. But apart from all of the awards for today, thank you very much for watching the video, and I do hope you enjoyed me taking a look at the best and the worst of the year. Hopefully Ninjago 2026 is much better in a lot of different ways. Not saying Ninjago 2025 was bad, I'm just saying that it could definitely be cool to see if I do this time next year and you do see a much more positive reception. But of course, who knows, and that is the joy of the show. But thank you very much for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please consider subscribing. Honestly, discussing Ninjago with more people is extremely fun to do. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could consider becoming a channel member and joining the legends that you do see on screen. A particular shout out to Grandmaster Sensei 28208 for being the eternal legend. But like I said, that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!